Hello History Club, this is Ben here, and I'm just going to do a quick overview of the Cuban Missile Crisis. So basically what happened was the USA were in support of the dictator Batista, who had been in power there since 1934, and he'd allowed businesses and businessmen to thrive in that country. However, in 1959, a revolution brought Fidel Castro to power, and he immediately ejected all business and investment from the USA. The USA retaliated, refusing to buy their Cuba's biggest export, which was sugar. In a sort of response, the Soviets, with their leader Khrushchev, said, "We'll buy your sugar," because they wanted more influence in the Caribbean, simply because America had missiles in Turkey and Italy, which could strike the USSR, posing a great threat. These are nuclear missiles, so they wanted to get closer to Fidel Castro to be able to implement something similar in that area. So then in 1961, the new President Kennedy decided to try and overthrow Cuba with the Bay of Pigs invasion, which was a massive failure, and as a result, the Cuba came closer to the USSR. By the end of 1961, Fidel Castro had announced his switch to communism. This allowed then, in September 1962, Khrushchev to start constructing missile bases, missile launch pads and missiles in Cuba, and on the 14th of October 1962, US U-2 spy plane spotted these being built. And then from the 16th to the 28th of October, there was a big crisis. So 16th, we have Kennedy's made aware. 18th to 19th, his advisories, they sit down and they work out what they're going to do. They eventually decide that they're going to blockade the waters around Cuba, a naval blockade. Khrushchev then replies to this on the 23rd of October, saying that his boats will go straight through, and on the 24th he says that he will use in combat nuclear warheads in the event of a war, which is really not good. So then on the 25th, then Kennedy asks him to remove the missiles. On the 26th, Khrushchev says he'll remove the missiles if Kennedy removes his missiles from Turkey. On the 27th, then, the brother of the president, Robert Kennedy, decides a deal. He sort of says, okay, we'll remove our missiles if you don't tell anybody that we're removing our missiles. On the 28th, Khrushchev accepts this deal. Cuban Missile Crisis over. The important thing to notice about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and this, if it comes up in the question, for example, it might say, why was the Cuban Missile Crisis a turning point in foreign policy, or how significant was Cuban Missile Crisis in foreign policy? The turning point here is this was the first time we'd had the arms race. They now had enough nuclear warheads to destroy the world, and this was the point now where this was the closest that they'd ever got to full-on nuclear war. So essentially, what the significance of this is that there was so much tension. If one of them had sent a strike, the other one would have striked, and then that was it. That would have been game over. The world would have been finished. And they played this game called brinkmanship, which was essentially trying to push each other into retreating by imposing these threats upon them. So it really took a blow to both countries, and they both sort of, after this, they started to think about relaxing relations, and then 10 years later we've got détente. So the importance of the Cuban Missile Crisis is that it was the first time that they were really close, seriously close, to being in a full-on nuclear war, and this changed their relationship. They set up a hotline between Washington and the Kremlin. 1963 August, the Partial Test Ban Treaty banned atmospheric tests of nuclear weapons. So it's the beginning of this sort of calming down period, which leads to détente in the 1970s.